Hello, everybody. It's me, Hazer, and yeah, fairly depressing video topic today. So not going to be the most cheery and upbeat, but I figured I would take some time to talk about it. Um, I know a lot of you won't be on Twitter and things like that, so I felt like it would be worthwhile. Anyway, let's just get into it. The news is that HiRez are laying people off as of today. Um, and Stu made this long post about it, so let's go through that first. Essentially, they've said that they're laying people off in order to position Smite 2 for a long and sustainable future. It's what people say. It will disproportionately impact those in marketing and publishing roles, and the people within game team roles that will be impacted are people who make cosmetic skin content and system features. And then there's a lot of talk of things. Stu talks about how it reflects a failure in his leadership, for which he takes personal accountability, which is nice to read, but probably doesn't make people who are laid off feel any better. Says it's not anybody who's getting laid off's fault, essentially. And then talks about what's happening now is that pretty much the entire company will be focused on the development of Smite 2. Very small amount of work going into Paladins and Smite 1. I'm not sure what that'll be like, just numbers updates and patch notes, I would imagine. If that, maybe a release of anything that they had in flight up to now. And Smite 2 will have a shift from including sort of cosmetic updates to being purely gameplay development and quality improvement. So new modes, new gods, and they're skipping out on cosmetic and monetization stuff. They also said that the core dev team working on Smite 2 is still bigger than the Smite 1 team through most of its life cycle, outside of during COVID when games kind of blew up and teams grew and everybody was working from home and you could hire easily and things like that. If you didn't know, during COVID, games companies pretty much just made a lot more money than they had done previously because everyone was stuck at home spending their money on cosmetics and games rather than going out and about and spending their money on restaurants and bars and football games and whatever else. Yeah, not that much else in here. There is a list of HiRez employees affected by today's layoffs on the Smite Reddit, worth checking out. But there's some very big names there. This isn't the first layoffs that HiRez have done. They did some as recently as June of 2023. They laid off about 30 people, but I feel like it's very. It feels like more of a core set of people. In this case, a lot of names that you'll recognize. Tina and Anna, I think, particularly have been around for a long, long time and very front-facing. Minos has been around for a long time as well. I think Jen had been at HiRez for 7 years or so. There's a lot of people. Mallory's been there for a long time, although I think she'll even come back. I'm not sure. But yeah, there's a lot of names there that I'm familiar with, that you're probably familiar with. And yeah, my heart just goes out to all of them. It's a horrible, horrible situation for people to be laid off. You know, people are relying on their job to pay their mortgage. People have kids. People have responsibilities. And this will impact their ability to just live their lives. And they'll be panicked and trying to, well, hopefully not too panicked, but it's a very stressful period. Went through some layoffs in my. I am somewhat familiar with this story. I went through layoffs in my last job. There's a couple rounds of layoffs. I didn't actually get laid off, but I hated the process so much that I ended up quitting a couple weeks after the layoffs. The round of layoffs was completed. It's miserable for the people who get laid off, and it's miserable for the people who are sitting around seeing which of their friends will be let go over them, celebrating the small victory of surviving in your job while your friends and colleagues are told that they have to go find something else to do for a living. It sucks. It sucks to see your colleagues, people who you build relationships with, be tossed aside by your employer. And you know, no matter how comfortable you are in your ability to do your job, you don't sleep right the night before you hear people are going to be laid off. It's horrible. And I hate it. And I hate that it's a normal thing in businesses, that companies routinely grow outwit their means, and then people who are just trying their best get punished because of it. Anyway, yeah, let's talk a little bit about how I think we've gotten here. There's going to be a lot of speculation about what's happened, how they've gotten to the point where they have to lay off so many people again. I think a lot of people will say that Smite 2, I mean, I've seen it around. I don't know if it's a lot of people, but you see people saying like Smite 2 was a gamble, a cash grab that they wanted to go for when they had a good thing with Smite. And they took a risk and it hasn't paid off. I just don't agree with that. I think that Smite was slowly dying, and that's why the Smite 2 change was made. I think they could see the numbers. We saw a lot of sweeping changes over the last couple of years of Smite to try and reinvigorate the player base, to try and get the game growing or not declining in terms of player counts, which I would imagine failed. You think back to things like big changes, like the 9.5 changes, where they made big sweeping changes that were unpopular in a lot of ways. They didn't make these changes just to mess things around. They made them because the people with the purse strings could see that Smite was no longer perhaps commercially viable in the state it was in. And I think that, after a little while, they said, okay, we have to do something different. And that's where Smite 2 came in. They decided to be pretty aggressive with it all, which I think is another thing that people will point at as a potential reason why this is happening, is they could have kept Smite ticking along and taken Smite 2 further down the development lines before they started, before they sort of killed Smite in a lot of ways, and started to try and make money from Smite 2. Maybe that wasn't, we don't have access to the numbers, so it's hard to say whether they could have done that, how that would have affected how long it would take for Smite 2 to come in, how that would have affected their ability to sustain the workforce that they had. I don't know. I do think a lot of the blame over the years has to go into, other failed projects. You look at the amount of games that HiRez have produced that haven't been successful, and the ones that have been successful, which they have shot themselves in the foot with. I think that's where the biggest blame goes. I think they've always tried to diversify, to have more than one successful product. Maybe they got there with Paladins. Maybe you can consider that. I don't know if that was profitable or not. Smite obviously made a lot. I think there was some... I think I saw... Did I see... I think 500 million revenue over the 12 years, which is crazy. That's a lot of money. Hopefully I didn't make that figure up. But anyway, I think, obviously the Paladins and Realm Royale blunders that were made, I think, are a big part of why the business isn't in a successful state now. And that's a big part of how we got to where we are. I think the bottom line is that they've looked at how much money they have, how much they're bringing in at the moment, and how much it costs to maintain the group of people they have employed, and found that the numbers don't add up, and that they will not get to the point where they can, accelerate Smite 2 into profitability, or being profitable enough without cutting costs. And this is why they've landed on the decision they've made now to lay people off. God, I wonder how much Doc got paid to design a Rogue Company map. You ever think about that? Christ. How many jobs, how many jobs could that have saved? Anyway, this is where they've landed. I think maybe they expected Smite 2's... I think they definitely expected Smite 2's development to be faster than it was, from what they were talking about when we were starting to hear things about Smite 2, and when we were starting to hear about the game being developed. What up, Rafi? yeah, I think that things have been slower moving than they expected. I think that their player count is probably lower than they expected and hoped. I think less people have bought the Founders Pack than they expected and hoped, which I could see them like trying to use that to get them to the point of profitability with Smite 2. But they obviously haven't gotten there. People have been pissed with the way they've tried to monetize Smite 2 while it was still in its alpha. They ended up removing that, but I can't imagine they were making much from it anyway. And that's where we are. And how does this affect Smite 2? I guess is another thing to touch on. Looking at the groups of people who are laid off and at the tone of the message, it's a lot of marketing and art related people, as I said, alongside a bit of a sparser group of people from other sections. There's a gameplay programmer who was let go. There's a character artist. Oh no, I guess that is art. There's an esports production person who was let go. But yeah, seems to be focused on toning down. I mean, especially you look at the fact that they got rid of Tina and Enna, who have been really big personalities and obviously have been working on Smite characters for a long time. You have to say that their focus is probably not going to be on skins in the near future. Instead, going to be on trying to get Smite 2 player count up. Initially, get to a player base that they believe is stable and viable by making the gameplay loop of Smite fun and good, and then sort of monetizing Smite 2 via the God Pack and the Founders Packs and things like that, going into getting it into whatever we're calling an open beta state or an open alpha state or whatever we're calling the first release, which anybody can just download and play for free. Trying to get to that state faster, and then make money from Founders Packs and God Packs initially, when they build up their player base, and then from there start to build skins and things like that again. I wonder if they're able to more easily port things from Smite 1, some cosmetics and things like that. I don't know. Maybe they'll be focusing on trying to bring over cosmetics that they can easily port from Smite 1 to make a bit of money before they can get to the free-to-play milestone. And then focus on producing, bespoke skins again from there. I wonder if they'll ever be able to replace the people that they've lost, the artists especially. I think that we all have many complaints about Smite and have done over the years, but I think in terms of cosmetic skin content, in terms of the skins that were released for the game, I don't think there were many people doing it better than Smite did over the duration of its lifespan, I guess, outside of maybe like Fortnite and gacha games and things like that. But Smite's cosmetics were pretty fantastic, and I wonder if we'll ever get to a spot in Smite 2 where things are as good. Anyway, I guess just to reiterate, this sucks. This sucks for everybody. I guess esports worth touching on. People have talked a little bit about on Twitter. I've seen things around esports 300k tournament. Should that be happening instead? And people are being laid off while you're running a 300k tournament for a broken game, I think is the overall tone of the message, which I think it does. Like it's a more valid complaint than most I've seen, let's say. I think that you have to consider what would happen if esports weren't running, which would be a different group of people who we know and love and work on Smite would likely no longer be employed by the company. There's a lot of people who do esports specific stuff that it would be very difficult to justify keeping around. And once you lose that talent, same as these other talent places, you likely aren't getting it back. I also think that esports, in a lot of ways, is necessary I mean, this is probably gonna, it's gonna, we're gonna be in a bit of an echo chamber here just because of who my audience is, which is largely esports related people. But I do think that esports is necessary with Smite, especially to maintain a healthy player base. Both it was in the original game, and I think it will be in Smite 2. I think a lot of the popular personalities and streamers in the scene are in the scene because of esports and likely would not be in the scene without esports. I think if there was no competitive Smite 2 this year, would you see Nika, for example, queuing up and hitting the Smite 2 ranked queues over and over again? I really doubt it. The two biggest personalities, well, the two biggest streamers we have in Smite are Incon and Weekend, both came from esports. There's a really big focus on esports in Smite, and so I think having some kind of esports around was almost necessary. And I guess they decided to go for this tournament because people were already madly complaining about everything in Smite 2 related to esports from the beginning, and they decided to put some pretty serious money behind it. People will say it should have been less. You know, if you put it down to 200k, maybe that could have saved someone's job and had roughly the same effect with regards to retaining players who were interested in esports. But you know, it's difficult. You're guessing. But I think that esports being around for Smite is necessary. Honestly, I really do think that there's just so much of the community of Smite, particularly on Twitch, but in other places too, is esports focused. And yeah, I don't think that just going without esports for a year and hoping that these people stick around would have been a viable strategy. I think especially with what you're seeing with people like Venenu and Leon competing in Deadlock. I think Quig and Dude Man Bro, not that Dude Man Bro was getting a Smite 2 team probably, but Quig and Dude Man Bro are also competing in Deadlock. You know, people are gonna move on if there's not something there for them. And this Vegas-based 300k LAN is the big thing that retains a lot of the big esports personalities, I think, you know. But yeah, I hope that was not too rambly. And again, my heart goes out to all the people who are laid off and all the people reeling from it and having to, you know, and all the people who have to stay and figure out how to fill the gaps left by the people who are laid off. It sucks. It's a horrible, horrible experience. Wouldn't wish it on anybody. And I hope that you're all doing your best to be kind in this time. I'm sure you all are. I don't think anybody's getting any shit apart from Stu, probably, which is, you know, some would say fair. I think the mismanagement of Smite games over the years has largely, I don't know if it's largely come from Stu. There was a lot of talk about it being HiRez's fault in the early days, for sure. Remember Focus in Smite 1? Probably like nobody does, but yeah, there's been a few. There was the big Realm Royale patch that was apparently led from the top. There was the Paladins patch. I don't know if that one was led from the top, but over the years, projects have supposedly been ruined by higher ups. And it's it's everybody else. I mean, obviously the higher ups also pay the price, but you know, they're comfortable. They're probably multi-millionaires living pretty happily. So yeah, Stu did also announce via Twitter in a reply to somebody that he'd taken a pretty hefty pay cut in order to try and prevent this kind of thing. So that's a thing. Somebody was banding about 250k a year as his salary. I don't know. I have no idea where those numbers are coming from. I don't know if HiRez is a public. I don't know if HiRez is a semi-public entity in the US has to file some kind of taxes related to that kind of thing. I know that for a lot of companies, especially companies on the stock market, you do. But I don't know what it's like for HiRez because they're semi-private, right? I don't know. I don't know enough about business to talk about this. We've reached the end. We've reached the end. Thanks very much for watching. Be nice in the comments, and I'll see you all some other time. Bye.